Welcome to Ethical Considerations Using DNA Results. My name is Lynn Broderick, and I will be your presenter for this session. In 2017, I wrote a Ready-for-RootsTech guide to DNA for FamilySearch. Its purpose was to prepare those who would be attending the conference to do their homework, like reading the terms of service for each of the DNA companies of interest. Although the session schedule is history, you might find value in reviewing this post if you have not yet submitted a DNA sample. This particular presentation encompasses these objectives: to provide a brief history of the development of genetic genealogy's ethical standards, to consider ethical questions in light of personal circumstances, and to provide resources for further consideration. So what about ethics in the field of genetic genealogy? You might be interested to know that the word genetics was coined in the early 1900s. That's not very long ago, but for our purposes, direct-to-consumer genetic testing began in the year 2000, when Bennett Greenspan established Family Tree DNA, offering Y and mitochondrial DNA tests for ancestral purposes at an accessible price. Fast forward to 2005, when the National Genealogical Society published a themed issue of the quarterly titled Genealogy and Genetics. This issue is dedicated to educating the community about genetic testing. The editors at the time, Claire Batag and Thomas Jones, felt that, well, the genealogical community was placing genetics on a, quote, back burner. They also felt that genetics will enrich the field, open new paths, and broaden horizons of genealogy and family history. During this time, the pendulum continued to swing with other disciplines as well. Science and medicine continued to harness the power of DNA in research and in application. In 1990, the FBI began a pilot program that was formalized by the United States Congress, the DNA Identification Act of 1994, which is the foundational law in the development of the Combined DNA Index System, commonly referred to as CODIS. Why do I mention this? Because at times our worlds collide, and we have recently learned that what we have in common in our DNA provides the assistance law enforcement needs to close a case. With all of this, you might be wondering, I have my DNA results, now what? There are a number of potential and real applications to using our genetic data, but we're talking genealogy here. And even within the community, there are debates about a number of issues in which, well, you're going to need to make a personal decision, but ethics can help. So that we're on the same page, let's define ethics. Ethics is defined as a guiding philosophy. Different from morals, ethics applies to questions of correct behavior within a relatively narrow area of activity, rather than one's own standards of behavior or belief. Basically, it is what does the community believe is right and what is wrong. This may seem like a simple statement, but when we make decisions, we affect others. In my study of ethics, I have found that there are two competing questions that need to be balanced in order to make what we would call an ethical decision. What are the benefits to myself, family, and others if I act on this decision? And who will be hurt or harmed if I act on this decision? Besides ethical considerations, you might have personal questions. It's important that you decide how you want to present your DNA results, particularly within the genealogical community. There is a privacy spectrum. Some feel very comfortable sharing everything. Others may not, and the choice is yours. So, do you share your results? If so, with whom? How much information should you share with known family, friends, or a DNA match? What about social media? How much do you share on the social media platforms? It's a choice. You're under no obligation. Will your information be safe with the person and/or company with whom you are sharing? There are many third-party applications that have enhanced the community. Please know who you are sharing with. Read the terms of service and understand how your information is being used. What are your responsibilities to others with whom you share DNA? To those who have tested? To those who have not tested? I have found that the concepts of privacy, respect, and informed consent are the governing principles that, when applied, enhance our relationships. And isn't that what genealogy and family history are all about? Ethics can be applied universally based on right and wrong. Laws are country-specific. In addition to ethical behavior, we have an obligation to know and honor the laws of our country and the place where we reside. In the United States, we have the National Human Genome Research Institute, an institute of the National Institutes of Health. On their webpage that addresses genetic discrimination, they provide links to the laws and statutes that govern in the United States, including GINA, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008. This law provides limited protection against genetic discrimination in employment and health coverage. It also provides a link to state statutes related to genomics, a handy little reference. In Canada, they have the Genetic Non-Discrimination Act, or the GNDA. This is something you might also want to investigate. In the European Union, they have the General Data Protection Regulation, or the GDPR. This is something that's very important to become familiar with if you are interacting with those of the European Union. Australia also has a page concerning genetic discrimination. And in the United Kingdom, there was a report published by the Biometrics and Forensics Ethics Group titled Use of Genetic Genealogy Techniques to Assist with Solving Crimes. This report may also be of interest to you. In December 2013, editors of the National Genealogical Society Quarterly lamented the loss of opportunity and responsibility to establish ethical standards. In an editorial written by Melinda Byrne and Thomas Jones, they wrote in part, "When genealogists began to apply DNA test results to family history, they had the opportunity and responsibility to set standards. It was an opportunity missed. Had they been established, such standards would have set boundaries to embrace the power of genetic testing and at the same time to avoid abuse. As difficult as it is to cite, describe, explain, or utilize this rapidly evolving tool, the real DNA test quagmire is ethical." In 2015, Blaine Bettinger confirmed my timeline of events that, unbeknown to the editors of the NGSQ, the issue of a lack of standards was already being addressed by C.C. Moore and an ad hoc committee. All of this concern coincided with a drop in price point for autosomal DNA. Once $999 per test, in its earliest days, 2007, the prices dropped to $99 by this time. The result of the committee's effort is a document, Genetic Genealogy Standards, 21 statements indicating the responsible use of DNA results in the field of genealogy. If we were meeting together today, I would at this point open the session to discussion and questions, but this year I can only offer this document to you as a place to find answers. It covers issues such as privacy, unexpected results, and interpretation of DNA test results. Unlike the golden rule, the bottom line with DNA testing is respect. You might say, I would or would not want to whatever it is relating to DNA testing, but another person might not want what you want. I've concluded that respect is the only ethical path. In the year 2000, which just happens to coincide with the establishment of family tree DNA, the Board for Certification of Genealogists, commonly referred to as BCG, took on the task of codifying standards for themselves in the genealogical community. 14 years later, on BCG's 50th anniversary, a committee released a new version of standards, but it was only in the year 2019 that 7 new standards relating to DNA were included, and 2 standards were modified. The latest revision was Standard 57. This change was in relation to respect for the rights to privacy concerning DNA and was effective immediately. The Board for Certification of Genealogists added to their Code of Ethics a section on DNA. for the purpose of protecting people who provide DNA samples. Whether or not you hold their credential, I highly recommend that you review their code of ethics. Now, just to recap, when we make decisions, we affect others. The questions that I have found most beneficial, and the simplest plan, is to consider these points. What are the benefits to myself, family, and others if I act on this decision? Who will be hurt or harmed if I act on this decision? And what action can I take that is reasonable, responsible, and respectful? You will find more information on the International Society of Genetic Genealogy's wiki, the ISOG wiki as we call it, on their Ethics, Guidelines, and Standards page. There you will find a number of links to a number of resources that will be able to assist you. I'd like to end by saying that as a community, we will determine by our actions whether genetic genealogy is Pandora's box or a treasure chest. There are those who would offer a wolf's cry, but this is an amazing tool that can help us connect with our ancestors and the descendants of our ancestors if we so choose, and act responsibly. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please let me know. I can be reached at thesingleleaf.com. Thank you.